The story of the secret tunnels beneath European cities is a quiet story, and it moves slowly, almost like water seeping through old stone. So as we begin, just imagine yourself walking through a calm street somewhere in Europe, maybe in the early morning, when the sky is soft and the light is pale and the sounds are gentle, because beneath those quiet streets there are passages and rooms and paths that people built long ago, and many of these tunnels are forgotten now, hidden under layers of time, and it feels peaceful to think about them, because they remind us that cities have long memories, and that every step we take above ground is held up by a history that stretches deep below. And today we will drift through that history in a slow and sleepy way, almost like wandering through those tunnels ourselves, taking our time with each turn and each shadow, letting the silence settle around us, and not rushing anything, because this is a calm story, a simple story, a boring story in the best possible way, made for relaxing, made for drifting, made for resting the mind. When people think of European cities, they often imagine high buildings, wide squares, busy streets, and tall cathedrals. But beneath many of these familiar places, there are spaces carved out by hands long gone, and these underground spaces can tell us so much about the way people lived, and the way they worked, and the way they protected themselves, and the way they stored things that mattered to them. And it is interesting how these tunnels are not loud or dramatic, but instead slow and steady in their purpose, like hidden threads holding a city together. And one of the oldest types of tunnels found under Europe are the ancient storage passages that people made to keep things cool and safe, because underground the temperature stays steady, and long ago people used that constant coolness to store food, wine, and grain, and also to hide valuables when times were uncertain. And if you imagine a tunnel like that, you might picture narrow walls made of rough stone, with small shelves carved into the sides, and the faint smell of earth mixed with dust, and the quiet echo of your footsteps as you walk through it. And even though these tunnels were practical, they also have a calm atmosphere that feels comforting in a soft and steady way. Another kind of tunnel beneath Europe comes from ancient cities that built drainage and water systems long before modern plumbing existed. And these water tunnels were essential, guiding fresh water into the city and carrying wastewater out. And though it might sound unexciting, it is strangely soothing to imagine how these systems flowed day after day, year after year, century after century, always moving slowly under the ground while people lived their lives above, hardly noticing the work being done below their feet. And the steady motion of water in darkness forms a peaceful image, steady and predictable, like the rhythm of a quiet breath. So, as we move through this story, we will wander from one kind of tunnel to another, and we will picture them without hurry, because the purpose of this journey is not to be amazed, but to relax, and to feel the slow weight of time in these old European cities, and to let that gentle weight pull you into a peaceful, sleepy state where every detail feels soft and simple. When we think about the tunnels beneath European cities, we can also think about the people who once walked in them, moving slowly with lanterns or candles, and the warm glow of those small lights would have softened the rough stone walls and made the long corridor feel quiet and safe. And it is easy to imagine the soft flicker of a flame reflecting off old bricks, creating gentle shadows that swayed back and forth with each step. And those shadows would have been the only movement in the stillness of the underground air, because these tunnels were usually calm places, places where sound traveled slowly and where every small noise seemed bigger but also softer, like the echo of a boot, or the whisper of someone carrying supplies, or the drip of water falling from the ceiling. And all of these sounds would blend into a simple and soothing rhythm, a rhythm that feels steady and peaceful even when we think about it now. Many European tunnels were first built as hiding places or shelter during times of danger, and though the reasons behind them are serious, the spaces themselves today feel almost gentle, because time has worn away the fear and left behind only the quiet shape of the passage. And thinking about that long passage stretching forward in a straight line or curving around a soft corner gives a feeling of drifting forward without effort, like walking through a memory that moves at its own slow pace. In some cities, There are tunnels used by monks who lived in old monasteries, and these tunnels connected different parts of the buildings, allowing the monks to move between rooms without stepping into bad weather, and the monks walked with slow steps and quiet minds, and it feels fitting that their tunnels still hold that silent, reflective energy, almost as if the calm thoughts of those long ago monks soaked into the stone and stayed there, waiting for anyone who wanders through today. Some tunnels were built much later during periods of war, when families needed safe places to gather and wait, and even though fear was part of those moments, what remains now is only the stillness of the empty space, the coolness of the air, the steady walls that held firm, and the sense of slow time that underground places always seem to carry. You can picture families sitting in these tunnels, speaking in soft voices, resting, breathing calmly, waiting for the world above to quiet down again. And you can picture the way the rooms might have looked, with simple benches and plain shelves. Nothing fancy, nothing bright, only what people needed, and everything arranged in the simplest way. And that simplicity makes it easy for the mind to rest, because there is nothing complicated to think about, nothing loud or distracting. And then there are the tunnels that were forgotten for centuries, sealed off or buried under new buildings, and rediscovered only by accident. And when workers open these spaces again, the air inside often feels untouched, as if it has been holding its breath for hundreds of years, and the objects found inside are usually ordinary, small things left behind by everyday people. And these objects, like shoes or pottery or tools, make us feel connected to the long line of lives that came before ours, and thinking about that long line creates a calm sense of distance, making the world feel slower and older and quieter in a way that helps the mind drift into a relaxed state. So as we keep traveling through these tunnels in our imagination, we are not rushing, we are not trying to reach a specific place, we are simply moving at the slow pace of history, letting the past unfold in gentle layers beneath our feet like soft waves of time. As we continue drifting through the quiet world beneath European cities, it is helpful to think about how these tunnels were shaped by simple tools, by hands that worked slowly and steadily, carving stone or laying bricks one by one. And you can imagine how long that must have taken, with each movement repeating day after day, the soft scrape of a chisel, the gentle thud of a hammer, the quiet shifting of earth. And all these repetitive sounds create a steady rhythm that feels almost like a lullaby when you think about it now. And the workers who built these tunnels probably never imagined that people in the future would walk through them and feel calm. But that is how these underground spaces often feel today, because when you take away the noise of the modern world, you are left with the soft echo of history, and it wraps around you like a thick, quiet blanket. Some tunnels beneath European cities were made for movement between important buildings, allowing people to walk from one place to another without being seen. And even though these tunnels were connected to politics or secrets, the spaces themselves are plain and simple, just long hallways with smooth walls and dim light. And if you imagine walking through one of these corridors now, the atmosphere feels almost soothing, with the steady surface under your feet and the slow air that barely moves, in the sense that time is stretched out in a long, gentle line. Beneath cities like Paris, for example, there are extensive networks of old stone quarries that later became storage spaces and tunnels. And these quarries were carved out long before the city above looked anything like it does today, which means that their walls have seen centuries of quiet, uninterrupted stillness. And imagining that stillness can make your own mind slow down, letting each thought pass through like a soft, drifting cloud. In other cities, like Edinburgh, there are forgotten streets buried under newer streets, forming layers of tunnels that were once open to the sky, but later closed off. And thinking about these layers is kind of soothing, like thinking about blankets stacked on top of each other, each one representing a moment in time, each one covering the last, until the past becomes a quiet space hidden deep below. And in places like Rome, the tunnels stretch back so far that it feels impossible to measure the amount of time that has passed, with early tunnels used for burial and later tunnels used for travel or storage. And the air inside these places often feels heavy in a calm way, like the weight of memory has settled gently on the stones. Even cities that seem small and peaceful today sometimes have tunnels beneath them that once carried water wheels or connected mills or supported defensive walls, and these structures, though practical at the time, now feel serene and slow, like echoes from a distant world that continues faintly beneath the surface. When we picture these tunnels together, all of them forming long lines under the continent, it creates a soothing image of hidden paths stretching quietly in the darkness. And even though many people never think about what is under their feet, these tunnels continue to exist, silent and steady, holding their history gently and inviting us to imagine them without hurry, one slow breath at a time. As we keep moving through this quiet story about the secret tunnels beneath European cities, it is easy to notice how the underground world feels very different from the surface, because above ground there is noise, light, movement, and change, but below ground everything feels steady and unchanging. And that stillness is one of the reasons these tunnels feel so calming to imagine. And when you think about a tunnel that has been there for hundreds of years, maybe even longer, you can imagine how many footsteps have passed through it and how many voices have echoed softly against its walls. And at the same time, you can sense how many long stretches of time passed with no footsteps at all, when the tunnel sat untouched, silent and cool. And thinking about that mixture of quiet activity and long rest creates a peaceful feeling, like watching waves come and go on a slow shoreline. Some tunnels beneath Europe were built for trade, allowing goods to move in and out of the city without blocking the streets above. And even though these tunnels once held carts, crates, and workers moving steadily from one end to the other, the spaces feel empty today, and that emptiness has a soft quality, like a room waiting patiently for someone to enter. Other tunnels were used to bring fresh water into cities through aqueducts that ran beneath the ground, and the sound of the water would have been so gentle, just a faint rush or trickle traveling slowly through the darkness. And when the water stopped flowing centuries later, the tunnels remained, holding the memory of that slow and steady sound. There are also tunnels built for defense, especially in places that expected attack, and these tunnels connected walls to towers and storage rooms to inner courtyards, forming networks that allowed people to move unseen. And although these defensive structures were designed with urgency in mind, today they feel calm, because all the danger they once prepared for has long since passed, and only the empty halls remain, without footsteps, without voices, without the rush of soldiers, only the gentle quiet of time. Some cities, like those in Austria or Germany, have cellars beneath almost every old building, and many of these cellars link together, forming long chains of rooms and passages that stretch out like hidden webs, and people use them for storing beer, wine, vegetables, and grain, because the temperature underground stayed cool and constant. And if you imagine these cellars now, lined with old barrels and worn wooden beams, you can feel the cool air in your mind, steady and calm, and that coolness helps slow your thoughts in a soft, relaxing way. In other places, like Prague, there are tunnels that were once part of the original street level, but as the city rebuilt itself over the centuries, the streets rose higher, and the old streets became basements or passages underground, and these spaces now sit quietly beneath the newer city, like the ghost of an older world resting under the present one. Thinking about these layered cities makes the mind feel slow and thoughtful, because it reminds us that places change slowly over long periods of time, and that each layer holds a story that never completely disappears. All of these tunnels, no matter their size or purpose, share a sense of slow time, and when we imagine them, we can let our thoughts move at that same pace, unhurried, steady, and calm, like walking very gently through a long, dark corridor where nothing needs to be done except noticing how peaceful the air feels. As we drift further into this calm journey through the secret tunnels beneath European cities, it becomes easier to imagine how these underground spaces feel almost like separate worlds, quiet worlds where time moves slowly and where nothing rushes. And if you picture yourself walking through one of these tunnels, you might notice how the air feels cool against your skin, and how every small sound echoes just a little before fading away. And that gentle echo makes even the simplest noise feel soft and distant, almost like a memory rather than a real sound. And this creates a soothing atmosphere that helps the mind unwind. Some tunnels were made for religious purposes, connecting chapels, crypts, or small prayer rooms, and the people who walked through them often did so in silence, carrying candles and moving with slow steps, and that calm movement seems to linger in the tunnels even today, as if the walls remember the peaceful footsteps. There are also tunnels beneath old castles and fortresses, carved into bedrock to create hidden exits or storage rooms. And even though these tunnels were once built for strategy and survival, the years have softened their meaning, leaving behind only the smooth stone, the faint smell of earth, and the quiet feeling of a place that has been asleep for a very long time. In some coastal cities, tunnels were made to bring goods from ships to warehouses without blocking the streets, and you can imagine the soft creak of wooden carts and the steady footsteps of workers moving through these dim corridors. And even though the workers are long gone, the image of that simple, repetitive motion has a calming effect, like watching waves roll slowly onto a shore. There are also tunnels built by natural processes, like lava tubes or underground rivers, and over time humans expanded or adapted them, turning natural passages into simple pathways, and the smooth shapes of these natural tunnels feel gentle, like curves carved by water or heat rather than by tools. And thinking about these organic spaces gives the mind something soft and neutral to follow. In many European cities, there are also stories of tunnels that people believed in but never fully proved, legends of passages connecting palaces to secret meeting rooms, or tunnels said to run beneath entire neighborhoods. And even though these stories might not be completely true, imagining them adds to the quiet mystery of the underground world. And mystery can feel peaceful when it is gentle and slow, like fog settling over an early morning street. Some tunnels contain old writing or drawings on their walls, left behind by people who passed through. And when you imagine these marks, faded but still there, it feels like hearing a whisper from the past that is too soft to disturb you, too quiet to wake you. Just a small reminder that someone once stood right where you are standing in your imagination. And in many places, these tunnels are cool enough that moss or small plants sometimes grow near the entrances, creating a small touch of life in a place that is otherwise still. And the contrast between the soft green plants and the gray stone is visually calming. All these details, when imagined slowly, help create a picture of an underground world that is steady and quiet, a world that waits patiently beneath the busy surface of Europe, holding stories of work, shelter, faith, and time, but holding them in the softest possible way, like a closed book resting on a shelf, untouched and peaceful. As we continue drifting through these hidden tunnels beneath European cities, it becomes clear that what makes them so peaceful to imagine is not just their age or their darkness, but the steady way they remain untouched by the rush of the world above. And when you picture these tunnels, you might imagine the quiet dust that settles on the stones, the soft patterns in the walls that formed over centuries, and the gentle temperature that never changes much, staying cool even in summer and mild even in winter, like a place that keeps its own slow rhythm no matter what happens outside. Some tunnels were used as marketplaces in older times, with merchants setting up small stalls underground to stay out of the heat or cold. And even though these markets would have been busy in their day, the spaces now feel completely still, with only the shadows of where the stalls once stood and the faint memory of voices that have long faded away. And imagining that shift from busy to silent creates a soft sense of calm. Other tunnels were built beneath palaces and government buildings, allowing important figures to move quietly from one room to another, and these tunnels were often carefully made, with smooth walls and gentle curves, and walking through them now feels like moving through a forgotten hallway that once carried secrets, but now holds only silence. In some cities, tunnels run beneath large public squares, supporting the heavy stones above, and thinking about these tunnels makes the square feel like a layer cake, with people walking, talking, and living above while stillness, darkness, and quiet history rest below. And that layered image helps the mind slow down as if you are peeling back time itself. There are also tunnels beneath old mines that were once full of workers digging for minerals, and these tunnels can stretch far and deep, branching in many directions like roots under a tree. And even though the work was hard, the tunnels today feel like a maze of calm passageways, echoing softly with your footsteps and your imagination. Some tunnels were made for safety during storms or floods, allowing water to escape the city, and these tunnels show how people long ago cared for their towns by working with the land, carving paths for water to move gently through the earth, and imagining the soft flow of water makes the mind feel peaceful. In other places, tunnels lead to underground rooms used for gatherings, meetings, or even celebrations. And though they were once filled with people, these rooms now sit quiet and empty, with simple stone benches and smooth floors that reflect the faintest glimmer of light. And picturing yourself sitting in such a room feels like resting inside a quiet cave where nothing demands your attention. Many European tunnels have stairs leading down into them, and imagining yourself walking down those stairs step by slow step deeper into the cool air feels like descending into a calm thought, leaving the noise of the world behind you one step at a time until you reach the bottom where everything feels soft, quiet, and still. All of these tunnels, whether they were made for work, storage, safety, or connection, now share the same peaceful quality, the same slow energy, and the same gentle sense of time that stretches out without rushing, and imagining them helps your mind drift like you are moving through a long, dim hallway where each moment feels calm and steady. As we move further into this soft and quiet journey through the secret tunnels beneath European cities, you may start to notice how imagining these spaces creates a gentle sense of safety, because tunnels, even though they are dark and hidden, often feel protective in a slow and steady way, almost like being wrapped inside a thick blanket made of stone, and the air inside them feels heavy but comforting, and the stillness creates a calm atmosphere where nothing changes quickly, and nothing needs to hurry. Many tunnels beneath Europe were built for storing food, and the steady coolness made them perfect for keeping things fresh before refrigerators existed, so families would place vegetables, dried herbs, cheese, and barrels of water or wine down there, walking slowly down the worn steps with baskets, and the memory of those everyday tasks remains in the quiet shape of the tunnels, making them feel familiar even if you have never been in one before. Some tunnels have stone arches that curve gently overhead, and these arches create a feeling of being held, like the space is shaping itself around you in a slow, steady embrace, and the pattern of the stones is so simple and repetitive that it becomes soothing just to picture it. In cities like Naples, there are huge underground spaces carved from soft volcanic stone, and these spaces were used as reservoirs, shelters, and storage, and over time they became like underground neighborhoods, with long corridors that stretch softly into the distance, and imagining those corridors feels like walking down a path that never rushes you, a path that simply exists, waiting for you to follow at your own slow pace. In some places, like the old towns of Poland or Hungary, tunnels run beneath the main squares, connecting merchants' houses and storage cellars, and these tunnels would have seen people working quietly with sacks of grain or crates of goods, moving carefully through the dim light. And even though those people are long gone, the thought of their slow steps creates a tranquil rhythm. Other tunnels were carved beneath churches and cathedrals, forming crypts where important figures were buried, and these spaces are hushed and cool, with smooth floors and gentle shadows. And when you picture standing in one of these crypts, it feels like being in a place where time has stopped, where everything is quiet and respectful and still. In many cities, tunnels were built to move messages or supplies during times of conflict, but after the danger passed, the tunnels were forgotten or sealed off, left as empty pockets of silence beneath the modern world. And those forgotten spaces create a peaceful image, like unopened rooms in the mind where dust rests softly on stone ledges. Some tunnels have old wooden beams for support, and these beams have aged slowly over hundreds of years, becoming dark and smooth, and imagining these beams standing quietly in the dimness gives a feeling of stability, as if they have been watching over the space for centuries without complaint. And then there are the tunnels carved beneath ancient walls, allowing guards to walk along hidden paths. But now these spaces sit empty, with only the faint echo of footsteps that once moved through them, and their long, straight shapes encourage the mind to drift forward slowly, step by step, into a gentle, relaxed state. All of these tunnels, whether large or narrow, deep or shallow, simple or complex, share the same gentle peacefulness when you imagine them, and they continue to hold their stories quietly beneath the cities that grew above them, like deep breaths waiting slowly in the earth.